Here in the UK, it's absolutely freezing at the minute. It's regularly dropping to -2, -3. So wherever you are in the world, if you have the option to ride in freezing cold weather, it's awesome fun, but you do want to take a couple of steps to make sure that you actually enjoy it. So in this video, I'm going to talk through some things that you want to put into your riding and you want to change either with your equipment or change with the bike to make riding in the freezing cold weather that bit more fun and potentially that bit safer as well. So I hope you really enjoy the video. So the first tip for riding in freezing cold weather is to make sure that you dress accordingly. Now, one of the things that I find really important, or I find get really cold on the bike, are your extremities, like your hands and your feet. So first of all, starting with your hands, so gloves. What I'll often do in really cold weather is I'll wear a pair of thick waterproof gloves like these. These are Altura waterproof gloves. I've also got the 100% Brisker waterproof versions. So I'll wear something like that, just a thick heavy duty glove to get me to the trail, because often your hands will freeze. But then the thing is with gloves like this is they're often a bit thick and a bit burly, and I don't actually like wearing them to ride in. So then I'll change to my 100% Briskers normally, or more of a summer glove. So your hands get cold easier in these, but you can feel the bars much better and you feel like you've got that much more control on the bike. So I'll often take two pairs of gloves. I wear a thicker pair to actually just ride to the trail on the road, you know, on the single track, whatever you're doing to get there on the climbs, and then flick over to a lighter pair of trails when I'm going onto the descent. So that's an option. The other kind of in between here, the 100% Briskers that I've got, the non-waterproof version. They're in the wash at the moment, but they're great because they're quite thin on the inside, but then they're thick on the outside to keep you warm. So getting the right gloves is a really good idea. One of my clients is actually saying that she wears silk gloves sometimes underneath a pair of gloves, and she finds that keeps her even warmer. So silk gloves are one to compare to wear under your gloves as well. The next thing you might want to consider, especially in windy weather, is a buff. These are an absolute lifesaver for keeping you warm. So what they do, I'll pop it on in a minute, but it stops wind going down your top, and it can also protect your ears as well, so they're absolutely amazing. Often you go out riding in 0-degree windy weather and your ears feel fine, so you'll think, oh, I don't need my buff. Take it off, and within a couple of minutes, your ears are freezing. So you literally, with these, just wear it over your head, and then it tucks in nicely, like that, so you can wear it sometimes around your mouth. Got it on the wrong way that way. Nice haircut now, I bet. So there we go, that's better. So you can often wear it like that, so it covers your mouth and then over your ears, or you can wear it that way if you want either. So not quite like that. So it protects your ears and it goes under your chin like that as well. So this version, dying with that one on. This version is quite a rigid one, so it doesn't move much. It's actually my mate Ozzy's, let's not tell him that I've stolen this. So it doesn't stretch very much. Now I prefer the type that are like the top where they stretch you, because then when you do wear it under your chin, you don't feel like it's going to choke you to death. So you can either wear them like that, just covering the front of your face, or you can wear it where it's over your mouth and over your ears, and they keep you nice and warm. They're well worth it. In freezing cold weather, highly recommend a buff. They're amazing. Just maybe go for the stretchy type rather than this. This is a bit too heavy duty for my kind of liking. My next tip is to get really good socks for on the bike. I'll often hear that people get freezing feet. Now, I wear my Shimano shoes all the time, all weather. So these are Shimano ME7s, and you'll notice that they've got that piece of Velcro that goes over the top. So they're not waterproof, but they are fairly water resistant. If you splash them, they will repel quite a bit of water. And they've also got this cuff here, which when you put your foot in, it goes quite tight on the top of your heel. And what that does is it just protects and stops as much water getting into it. Water does come in, like I say, they're not waterproof, but they're better than kind of just a typical summer shoe, if you like. Now, shoes can be the right, important thing, getting the right shoes to wear, but I find socks are equally important. So in freezing weather, what I do is I wear a pair of merino wool socks underneath, and then I'll wear my sealskin waterproof socks over the top. I find that lasts me for a good 2.5 hours before I get cold, and that can literally be riding through water. The only time I find that I do get freezing still when I'm wearing that is if I actually step in an icy puddle, and I mean like a full-on 0 degree icy puddle type, and then the water sits in your shoe and goes cold, so even though you've got those layers, it still gets you cold over time. But generally speaking, a merino wool sock with a waterproof sock pulled over the top keeps me nice and toasty, at least for 2.5 hours before I find that my feet start to go cold. So that is a big tip. I highly recommend doing that. Now in really cold weather, if it's really muddy or if it's really snowy, you may find that your cleats get really clogged up with snow, and you get a load of snow compacted into your clips, and it makes it impossible to actually clip in and out. So the only thing you can do when you're on the trail is kind of batter your foot on a rock, try and spin the pedal around to get it out, but it's not ideal. So what you might want to do, I've heard that Crank Brothers egg beaters are really good pedals for in the snow. I've never tried them myself, but they have like a more open platform. So where these Shimano XTRs, you can see actually a bit of mud that's still lodged in there from my last ride. Where the XTRs have got quite a small bit, where if a little bit of mud gets stuck in it, it just stays in there. The egg beaters are kind of a more open design, so I think the idea with that is the mud and the snow doesn't get as compacted in there. So you might want to consider those. Like I say, I've not tried them, but a lot of my followers message me saying to try them. Or instead of going for an SPD shoe, you might want to try flat in the winter. You can get your foot out a little bit more easily, but there's obviously not as much happening with those pedals, so you can keep your foot planted on there more often, and even if the pedal gets compacted with snow and mud, at least the pins are still pushing through, so you can still grip onto them. So that's one for you to consider. While I'm down here, so we've talked about equipment, we've gone through getting the right gloves, wearing the right socks, your clipless shoes, making sure you do that, and the buff, which I so nicely demonstrated, nearly killed myself. Ben said that, my videographer said that I sounded like Donald Duck, so you can let me know in the comments if I did. The other thing to consider is moving on to the bike a little bit. So in the winter, your tyre compound is actually going to stay harder than in the summer because it's colder. So your tyre rubber is going to feel softer in the summer than it is in the winter when it's 0 degrees, so that's something to consider. So what you may want to do in the winter, you're riding slower generally anyway in sort of slippier, snowier conditions, and so you can run that, so you can have a lower tyre pressure for that point of view. And as well as that, you're probably going to need more grip because there's more wet roots, that kind of thing. So what you might want to do to combat the rubber feeling harder and to combat all the crappy conditions outside is drop your tyre pressure down a bit, and that'll just help the tyre be that bit more malleable, and it'll help it bend a little bit more to offset the stiffness of the rubber when it's stiffer in the cold weather. But as well as that, because you're not going as fast, you're less likely to roll the tyre in fast corners, so you can get away with having that lower tyre pressure. So riding in really cold weather, you might just want to consider getting running those tyre pressures a little bit lower. It's worth considering. Just 3 psi lower, something like that, will make a difference. So my second to last tip is to make sure that you bring plenty of extra clothes. You don't want to just plan for the ride, you want to plan for what if I have to stop for 20 minutes to have some food, what if I get a flat tyre that I need to fix, or worst comes to worst, what if there's an injury. So what I'd recommend, if you're not near a road or near home, take some more layers and some more clothes, so at least if something like that does happen, you can get your jacket out of your bag and you can wrap up a little bit warmer. And you can even maybe carry a foil blanket in your bag, which wraps up to a tiny size, sits in the bottom of your pack when you're riding, and then if you do need it, you can pull that out and at least you've got that to keep you warm. So it's definitely worth considering having more clothes on you, so if the worst does happen, or if you just stop for a brew or stop for some food, you can wrap up that bit warmer, because the difference between how warm you keep when you're riding compared to how cold you get when you stop can be huge, so definitely bear that in mind. The final tip, now this is more of a riding tip and a bit of a mindset tip. When you're riding in cold, snowy, slippy, wet conditions, it's even more important than it normally is to relax. If you're riding along a trail with locked out arms, really stiff arms, and the bike's trying to move underneath you, it's going to feel out of control. It's going to feel like you're bouncing off everything. What you want to do instead is just relax your arms a bit, relax your legs, and let the bike move around you. When it's snowy, the bike's going to move around and find its own line. Same when it's muddy, it's going to be cutting through the mud and finding the best grip. So you just need to get comfortable with letting the bike move around with you, and that goes for the climbs, the traverses and the descents. The more you relax in the sort of poor, cold conditions, the better you're going to ride. If you get really uptight, it just doesn't weld very well with riding in lower traction conditions. So bearing that in mind, and make sure you relax a little bit more. Obviously, the warmer you are, the better the clothes you've got on, the easier it is to relax. So all these tips do pull in together. So I hope you really enjoyed this short video. Just wanted to give you some tips while it's freezing cold in the UK and perhaps where you're riding. If you live in a country where it's always warm, I'm very jealous. But here in the UK it is definitely not. It's bitterly cold at the minute. So I hope you enjoyed this tip video. If you've got any other tips you'd like to add, please leave them in the comments and make sure you subscribe as well. And I'll see you next time for another MTB Fitness video.